Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for being here at Ascension Living. Now, when I say what I'm about to say, I have a feeling that most of you guys are going to be confused, or you might think that I'm crazy. Maybe I am a little crazy. However, food addiction has nothing to do with food. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Before we get started, if you can give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, press the notification bell when you do subscribe so that you can be notified when I upload a new video. You could also feel free to check me out on Instagram at Eric Sanchez. Your support really helps me out, and it also helps other people who may need to find this content find it. And so in your own little way, it's like contributing to the greater good of humanity. All right, so now let's get into it. Food addiction really does have nothing to do with food. We have this really outdated way of looking at addiction. We think that somebody just did something over and over and over again, and they just kept on doing it, and then they just fell in love with it. Oh, I just kept eating this certain type of food and then I just loved it so much that I became addicted to food. Or, oh, I just had so much sex and I became addicted to sex. We have these really outdated views of how addiction works. The idea that doing too much of this specific thing is what leads to addiction is just outdated, and it doesn't hold any water. When we're talking about food and food cravings, this is different from food addiction, okay? You can't eat a certain type of way over time, and of course that's gonna build a certain type of gut microbiome, which can then attract things like yeast and parasites and fungus and candida overgrowth, things that make you crave the foods that help keep those different pathogens alive. But that's not what we're talking about in this video. That's a whole different video. We're talking about food addiction, doing something that always ends up bringing you some type of guilt or shame afterwards, but not being able to stop, or feeling like you're not able to stop, because you definitely can, and we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so let's dig deeper into food addiction or addiction in general. Addiction stems from a place of discomfort or pain that has been perceived to require some form of escape, soothing, or comfort. Oftentimes, these patterns actually started years ago, decades ago, even in childhood. Not for everyone, but for a huge portion of people, these patterns started taking place in childhood. Repetitive use, and I really want to pause and emphasize the word use, okay? Because you're really using these substances, you're using food. Repetitive use of this attempt to escape over time results in changes of the brain. Using this then becomes compulsive, and then that leads to addiction. The word use there, again, is such an important distinction, okay? When we are engaging in the consumption of foods that don't make us feel good about ourselves, we are using them to medicate, to self-soothe, to often mitigate some type of physical or often even emotional pain. So when we are consuming these foods, we're not really doing it for the food itself. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. We're not doing it necessarily for whatever it is, the hot dog, cheeseburger, whatever you don't feel good, you yourself, because it's a person-to-person situation. Whatever you yourself don't feel like you have control over consuming, you're using that in an attempt to self-soothe, in an attempt to bring some type of comfort. This is the difference between eating food because you have a genuine craving, or maybe because of the parasites and the candida overgrowth and yeast and fungus and these things. That's eating food versus using food. Eating versus using. You got it by now? When you are in active food addiction, you're actually using food to alter the chemicals in your brain, to numb out, to self-soothe. This is because you have some type of need that needs to be met. And when we're talking about food addiction, we're talking about appropriate needs, okay? These are appropriate needs: to feel comfort, to feel love, to feel supported. These are normal human needs. There's nothing wrong with having those needs. The problem is that we are trying to meet those appropriate needs in inappropriate ways. Just one of many examples of how this might manifest is if you're living in a very unhealthy, maybe traumatic type of living environment, right? And your brain starts to realize that when you eat certain foods, these chemicals in your brain that are imbalanced come back into balance, and your brain goes, okay, well, we can build a pathway there. Every time this person who is feeling down eats this thing, they feel better, even if it's temporary. And so that's what your brain's doing. Your brain loves you, and it's really just trying to help you. That's just how we're wired to function. That was just one example, but this can be stemming from a trauma that you experienced years ago. It could be stemming from one specific event. It could be stemming from a series of specific events. As you keep on using these foods, we have these pleasure centers in our brain called hedonic hotspots, okay? This is a pleasure center of our brain, and it stores certain memories that remind us how good something feels when we are feeling down. Your brain goes, okay, Sarah is experiencing stress and anxiety, gives her this memory of feeling good while eating a certain type of food, encourages her to do that, and then you feel like you can't say no and you go for it, right? Sarah feels like she can't say no and she goes for it. Every time you press that button, I'm afraid, I want to escape through food. I am stressed, I want to escape through food. I'm highly anxious, I want to escape through food. Every time you do that, you're pressing a button And then eventually that button forms into a pattern, which the brain absolutely loves patterns. The brain loves patterns. It's just how it works. It's just how we're wired. Your brain is literally just trying to find ways to meet these chemical imbalances. The problem with this pattern is that it doesn't get to the root cause of anything. It's a very treatment-based approach, and it often leads to you feeling very shameful, very guilty, especially if the foods you're eating, you know them to be unhealthy, and you know that they're contributing to your physical ailments. That'll bring the shame right on up, right? If you know that you have some type of physical diagnosis and that eating a certain type of way is contributing to that manifesting and growing larger, of course you're gonna feel bad. You're in this vicious cycle, this vicious loop of, pain equals eat unhealthy foods, equals shame. Shame is a negative emotion, which equals eat unhealthy food. And then you're just in this ongoing cycle of not really having control over your life. And that's not a good way to live, right? This is a very debilitating cycle for a lot of people to be in, okay? So in food addiction, people aren't eating these foods necessarily just because they enjoy it, right? Just like in sex addiction, people aren't necessarily having sex just because they love sex. Again, these are inappropriate ways to meet appropriate needs. And that's not to say that if somebody has food addiction, they don't actually enjoy food, or if someone has sex addiction, they never enjoy sex. It's not to say that at all. You can be a food addict and actually genuinely love pizza, right? It's not black and white. Welcome to the human experience. We are very complex by nature. But for the most part, these are just unsuccessful ways that we are attempting to meet these various needs. In food addiction, right, when you're using whatever it might be fried chicken, it might be pizza, it might be ice cream, it might be anything. Your brain is actually using them as tools. Okay, your brain is doing this because it loves you. Unfortunately, it doesn't have this extra filter. We haven't reached that point in evolution where we can have a filter and we can say, no, this is probably too much and we should find other ways to meet our needs and let's just go to therapy, right? We haven't reached that point in evolution. I don't know if we ever will. But, however, these are tools that your brain is attempting to use. They just aren't very good tools. The flip side of that is that we can develop amazing tools to meet these needs. Welcome to holistic healing, right? Obviously, that sounds a lot more simple than it actually is. Self-mastery is a process, right? Mastering the mind, the body, and the soul. Getting rid of layer by layer by layer of trauma. This is why when I talk about detoxification, you will never catch me just talking about it on a physical sense. It is always going to be a mind, body, and soul thing. When we combine the three and we take action there on a consistent basis, right, with a professional, with someone who's there to help you, you're going to see that healing it's all three of those, right? We get physical ailments because our mind, body, or soul is imbalanced. When we balance those, we reach a state of homeostasis, which is so beautiful, which everybody should have the right to experience. Look at the year we're in. There are millions of people healing from addiction right now. There are so many resources out there. There are so many people in very similar situations to the one that you're in right now. You can always head over to my website at ascensionliving.co. I actually have a 12-week Transform Your Life mentorship coaching course/program where we work on revamping your life, your mind, body, and soul for 3 months. We meet on a weekly basis and we do Zoom meetings on a bi-weekly basis. It's for people who really want to revamp their lives and really want to dedicate their time into investing in this. I heard someone say this before and I absolutely loved it. The secret to living a highly satisfying life is to master yourself, not master your symptoms. Okay, that's what most people are doing in an active addiction. They're trying to master symptoms. They're trying to fix and work on symptoms. And that's not what we want to do. We want to work on the self. We want to get to the root cause of things because then we get to live the rest of our lives free. And who doesn't want that? If you are watching this and you are dealing with some type of addiction or you feel like you just can't say no to something, maybe food specifically, right? If you're watching this video, I want to let you know that physical freedom is your birthright. And mental freedom is your birthright as well. Do not give up until you are living the life that you want to live. I guess I'll wrap it up right there. If you would like to support this channel again, I would love a thumbs up. If you wanted to subscribe and press the notification bell so you can be notified when I upload a new video, that would be great as well. If you want to drop some comments, leave your opinions. I love engaging with you guys. You can check me out on Instagram as well. And until next time, dude, be kind. Thank you.